Hi, my name's Penny, and as usual, I'm here to talk about some bookish things. Specifically, today I wanted to talk about the last 1,000 pages of fantasy that I've read. So this is a series I've been doing where every time I read 1,000 pages of a particular genre, then I come and tell you about them and let you know what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and whether I would recommend them. And once again, this fantasy 1,000 pages has about 2,000 pages in it actually, because I have just read too much fantasy. Also, all of these were quite long books, and I did want to talk about more than just 2 books. So, we've got 3 books to talk about, and it's about 2,000 pages worth. Now, we are going to go through these from worst to best, so that means we are starting with Prince of Dogs by Kate Elliott. But even though this was the worst of these 3, I still did really like this. I gave it 3 stars. We only go up from here. Although, if I'm honest, I still have quite mixed feelings about this series. I do have all 7 books of this series, and so I feel like I really want to like it. And it's almost like I'm in denial that it isn't an amazing series. But I am still really enjoying it. This is an epic fantasy. We're following quite a few different characters as there is both this internal conflict within the kingdom fighting over the throne, as well as these like dragon people that have come across the seas and started attacking the kingdom. There's also a lot of hints that there is some dark magic stuff going on, but it's a very slow burn. A lot of that hasn't kicked in yet. And I kind of get the feeling that Kate Elliott, who wrote this, is trying to get the characters into such a bad situation that when the bad magic hits, it's going to be like awful and amazing. But maybe that's just what I hope is going to happen. I don't know. I'm only on the 2nd book. It's a 7-book series. There's a long way to go.
Still have a long way to go.
There definitely are some plot lines within this book that I'm really loving. Unfortunately, because it does follow so many different perspectives, each perspective only progresses a small amount within the book. And it's not as bad, for example, as Blood Witch, where I felt like each character didn't really do anything. In this one, stuff definitely happens, the plot definitely moves along, but I want more of particular characters. I also find this book a little bit strange because most of the main characters are children or very young adults, but I wouldn't say this is written in a way that it's a young adult book. Pretty sure it's an adult fantasy, and so it seems weird when your main characters are children. There are still quite a few adult characters, and I really like it when we get to their perspectives, but I don't think there's enough of it for what I would like. Because I own all 7 books, I feel like I've committed myself to reading all 7 books, regardless of how I feel about it. Now, to be honest, if I was hating it, I think I would stop, but I am really enjoying it, and I'm very curious to see where this series will go. But it is quite slow paced, so it's a bit of a slog to get through the books since they're so long, and every single one of the books is about this length or longer. So I think it's going to take me a while to complete this series, and I really, really, really hope that the payoff is worth it. I probably can't tell you until I finish it whether that's true, so you're going to have to be patient. So, the next fantasy book that we've got to talk about is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. So this is the first book of the Liveship Traders trilogy, which I believe is the 2nd trilogy in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings series, which has quite a few different trilogies within that bigger series. Sometimes fantasy series get a bit confusing. So I had just completed the Assassins trilogy before this, and going into it I thought that this would be some kind of continuation of the events that happened in that trilogy, but it's not really. I'm pretty sure that it is set after those events, but there's not enough information to really be sure at this point. We're in quite a different part of the world from most of the action in the Assassins trilogy, although you know where you are relative to where the Assassin's Trilogy happened. Although the town you're primarily in is mentioned in the Assassin's Trilogy, so you still know you're within the same world, and there are some similarities. Also, the Assassin's Trilogy was told from Fitz's perspective, so like a single perspective, even though it was third person. However, the Liveship Traders series follows a range of different perspectives, and going into the audiobook, which is how I read this, that did confuse me a bit at first. I was also confused because I also listened to the Assassin's trilogy and I was expecting the same narrator, and instead we have a female narrator, even though a lot of the perspectives we're following are male. And at first I wasn't sure about that, but now that I've read that first book and I'm actually partway into the second book, I can see that there are a lot of women and girl perspectives. So I think that that narrator choice was correct. It just confused me a bit to begin with. Maybe I'm just easily confused. Because, yeah, I was also confused about these multiple perspectives, and at first I couldn't really see how they linked together. About halfway through the book, the plot lines do all come together and you understand how everything is connected around this bigger problem. Don't want to spoil you. Oh, also, so the audiobook that I listened to, one thing that it does do when it skips between perspectives is it doesn't give you any indication that it's switching from one perspective to the next. So one moment you're listening to one character and then suddenly you're following along with a different character, and it's not until like the wrong pronoun is used or the wrong person's name is used that you realize, oh, we're somewhere else completely now. And I don't know what the physical book is like, whether there was some kind of indication of who you're now following along with, or at least I'm sure the book had some kind of indication that there is a change here. In the audiobook, there was nothing, and I think that that made the audiobook quite hard to follow along with at some points. In general, the Liveship Traders series is about these ships that are owned by a particular family, and once 3 generations of that family has died, the ship gains a consciousness. Primarily, we're following the family of the ship Vivacia as she first gains her consciousness. There are also these weird sea serpents that are doing some stuff, and I know that eventually that storyline is going to make sense and seem important, but at the moment I'm not really clear what the sea serpents are adding to the story. There is also another live ship that gets quite a lot of page time, and that is Paragon, the mad ship, who I believe will be more of a focus in the second book. But Paragon is a ship who has gone out many times and come back with everyone on board dead. He's quite incoherent now and doesn't always talk very sensibly. He's also blind because he's had his eyes chipped out, because the ships do have, I guess, like on the front of ships you have those people, so they still have a wooden carved body that they can speak through and act through, even though the whole ship is their body in another way of thinking. I think that Robin Hobb has crafted a really wonderful world, and through that she's also been able to develop the characters to be very realistic. And throughout the book I became very invested in the different dramas that the characters were undergoing. So it's similar to Prince of Dogs in that there's a lot of different threads going on, and I'm still kind of waiting to see whether the payoff in the end will be worth it. If I'm honest, because I've already read a trilogy by Robin Hobb that I loved and it did come together, I'm more confident that that will do that than I am for Prince of Dogs. I also think the character development in Ship of Magic is just so much more in-depth and realistic. So I do think that I actually only gave Ship of Magic 3 stars, but the more I think about it, the more I think maybe it deserves 4 stars, and that then the last book I'm going to talk about, which is Middlegame by Seanan McGuire, I only gave that 4, maybe 4.5 stars, but maybe I'm just being too harsh lately. Maybe I should just give it a 5 stars like it probably deserves. So, Middlegame by Seanan McGuire. It's getting a lot of hype lately, and I actually worry that that's going to hurt it eventually, because I don't think it is a book for everybody. It can be really slow at times, and because the writing is written in this quite whimsical way where it's exploring lots of side topics as it goes, sometimes that seems a little bit off topic, and I could see it being quite frustrating at times. Personally, I really like the way that Seanan McGuire writes in that way, and so I really enjoyed it. So the story follows 2 twins, or 2 children who have been created by alchemists, The alchemists are planning to use these two children to control the universe. However, most of the story actually follows just these two children growing up. Both of them struggle to some degree because they each have a specialty. Roger has a specialty in language and Dodger has a specialty in maths, and because they're so focused on those areas, it does mean they struggle a little bit with living a normal life. So most of the story is just about these two children who are not completely normal, growing up, exploring their relationship with each other, and just struggling with how they want to live their lives. A lot of the prose explores kind of the expectations that are put on people to live in a certain way and just questioning society in general. And I think if those are themes that you're interested in and you like Seanan McGuire's writing style, then you will really love this. Like I loved it. I thought Roger and Dodger were just wonderful, especially Dodger. I loved her. I also really loved Erin, who is another side character with alchemical abilities. Although I will say, because Erin was my favorite character, I was somewhat disappointed in the ending, although it made sense, but I wanted a nice, beautiful, shiny ending where Erin got everything she ever wanted. So that disappointed me, but I do think for people who didn't get weirdly attached to Erin, you probably will be quite happy with the ending. I also think the magic system didn't necessarily make a lot of sense. In some ways, it seems like it's going to be this quite scientific magic system, a little bit like Brandon Sanderson always has, quite detailed and realistic magic systems that seem like they could be a real thing, and they have very clear rules. The alchemy in Middlegame doesn't really have many clear rules at all. Although there clearly are rules, they're never detailed enough in their explanation that you understand them as a non-alchemist. Also, there is an alchemist named Reed, and I found most of the parts of his story quite boring, although at the same time I would have liked to understand more about what his actual motivation was. I think that's why I didn't really like his parts of the story, is that they were all very mysterious and like, oh, what's he doing? He's the bad guy. But I wanted to understand more about his story. I actually hope that at some point Seanan McGuire will write a prequel telling the story of Reed's creation, as well as this alchemist from the past that's referred to quite a lot in the story. I think her name is Asphodel is what I've written down, but who knows. There is this alchemist in the past, this woman who took on like the Council of Alchemists, and she wrote this children's story, and parts of that story are referenced throughout Middlegame, and I would love to read that whole story. It's called The Up and Under, and that children's story, like the little bits we get, was so cool. It's very Wayward Children-esque, and I just wish we could get more of that story. So I know Seanan McGuire has said that if Middlegame was successful, then she would be able to write more in this same world, and Middlegame seems to have been pretty successful, so let's hope that we actually get that. I don't see why we shouldn't. The only other thing that I do want to mention for Middlegame is there are trigger warnings for suicide. It does get a little bit extreme in parts of the story. It is an adult fantasy and it can get quite dark in some bits, so I think it's just important that you go into it with the right expectations. It's not going to be light and fluffy and fun like Wayward Children, although there are aspects of that, but in general the whole story is not like that at all. And that's what I love about it. I love dark, twisty stuff with great character development, and that's exactly what Middlegame is. So I really loved it, even though I do agree in some parts it maybe got a little bit slow. Generally for me it got back on track soon enough. I could see that some people would get frustrated with all the side paths that the prose goes down. I think if you like Seanan McGuire's writing and you like stuff that gets a little bit dark, especially seeing children kind of grow into their powers and discover who they're supposed to be, then I think you might really like this book. And I think I also forgot to say, for Ship of Magic, I would definitely recommend that series, or the whole Robin Hobb realm of the Elderlings if you like epic fantasies and character development again. But I definitely think both of these books were much more strong in the character development side of things than the plot side of things. Anyway, that was the last 2,000-ish pages of fantasy that I've read. Do let me know if you have read any of these books, whether you thought similar things about them or whether you're interested in picking any of these up. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.